Billionaire sees his maid teaching his daughter. What he did next shocked everyone. Marcus Wellington stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, gazing down at the Manhattan skyline that had become both his kingdom and his cage. At 34, he had everything the world told him to want: a tech empire worth billions, a sprawling estate in the Hamptons, and influence that reached into every corner of Silicon Valley. Yet as he loosened his Hermes tie, he felt the familiar hollow ache that no amount of success seemed to fill. His phone buzzed with its endless demands: another board meeting, another acquisition, another gala where he'd smile for cameras while feeling nothing at all. Marcus had built his fortune through artificial intelligence, creating algorithms that predicted human behavior with uncanny accuracy. The irony wasn't lost on him that he could program machines to understand people better than he understood his own 7-year-old son.
Emma.
His daughter was the one pure thing in his calculated world, the only piece of his late wife Sarah that remained. Sarah had died in childbirth, and Marcus had spent 7 years building walls around his heart, pouring himself into work, letting nannies and tutors raise the little girl who had her mother's gentle eyes. He told himself he was providing for her, giving her every advantage. But deep down, in the quiet moments he tried to avoid, Marcus knew he was running from grief, from responsibility, from the terrifying vulnerability of loving someone completely. The call from Emma's principal 3 weeks ago had shattered his carefully constructed distance. "Mr. Wellington, I'm concerned about Emma. She's failed her midterm exams in every subject. More troubling, she seems withdrawn. Lonely. I think she needs more than academic support." The words had cut through Marcus's armor like nothing else could. His daughter was struggling, and he hadn't even noticed. He'd hired the best tutors money could buy, of course. 4 different specialists, each with impeccable credentials and hourly rates that could feed a family for a month. They'd lasted a combined total of 2 weeks. Emma refused to engage, sitting silent and stone-faced through their sessions until, one by one, they'd resigned. "Your daughter needs connection, not curriculum," the last one had told him pointedly before walking out. Marcus had responded the only way he knew how, by throwing himself deeper into work, staying later at the office, taking calls during the rare dinners he shared with Emma. He'd convinced himself that if he just built his empire big enough, strong enough, it would somehow protect her from the pain of the world. But standing there that evening, watching the sun set over a city full of strangers, Marcus felt the foundation of his delusions beginning to crack. His driver took him home through Manhattan's glittering streets, past restaurants where he'd closed deals and hotels where he'd given keynote speeches. The Wellington estate in the Upper East Side loomed before him, all pristine stone and manicured gardens, looking more like a museum than a home. As Marcus walked through the marble foyer, he heard something that stopped him in his tracks. Laughter. Real, genuine, bubbling up from the belly laughter. Emma's laughter. He followed the sound to the dining room, where he froze in the doorway, invisible to the scene unfolding before him. His daughter sat at the grand mahogany table, papers spread around her, her face bright with concentration and joy. Beside her sat Maria Rodriguez, the housekeeper he barely noticed despite her working in his home for the past 6 months. Maria was 28, though Marcus had never bothered to know her age or much else about her. She was simply the maid, someone who kept his house running, who was there but not there, part of the invisible machinery of his life. But watching her now, truly seeing her for the first time, Marcus felt something shift in his chest. She was explaining fractions using chocolate chip cookies, breaking them into pieces, her hands gentle and patient. Her voice carried a warmth that made the cavernous dining room feel suddenly intimate. "You see me, amor? When we share, we don't have less, we just have it in different pieces. Your mama, she shares her love with you in pieces too. In memories. In the way you laugh like her. In moments like this." Emma's eyes shone with understanding, not just of mathematics, but of something deeper. She reached out and squeezed Maria's hand, and Marcus saw his daughter smile the way she hadn't smiled since Sarah was alive. "I miss having a mom to help me with homework," Emma whispered, so softly Marcus almost didn't hear it. Everyone else has someone who helps them understand things. Maria's expression flickered with pain before settling into something tender and fierce. You have me, Pequeña. I may not be your mama, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Marcus backed away from the doorway, his heart hammering, his carefully constructed world view crumbling around him. He retreated to his study, poured himself 2 fingers of scotch he didn't drink, and stared at the photo on his desk, Sarah, radiant and pregnant, just days before Emma was born. Before his world ended and began again in the same moment. What would you say to me? He whispered to the photograph. What would you say about the father I've become? The man I've turned into? The answer came not in words but in memory. Sarah's voice, telling him on their wedding day that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. That love required presence, not presence. That the heart doesn't respond to logic, it responds to showing up. Marcus set down his glass and made a decision. Tomorrow morning, he would start showing up. Maria Rodriguez moved through the Wellington mansion in the pre-dawn darkness, her worn sneakers silent on the marble floors. She'd learned to make herself invisible here, to exist in the spaces between the family's notice. It was safer that way. Less complicated. Less chance of her heart breaking any further than it already had. As she prepared breakfast in the massive kitchen, all stainless steel and unused gadgets, Maria let herself remember. 2 years. 2 years since the accident that had stolen her world. The drunk driver who'd run a red light, the twisted metal, the hospital corridors that smelled of antiseptic and ending dreams. Her husband, Diego, gone instantly. Her son, Miguel, holding on for 3 days before joining his father. Miguel had been 7. The same age as Emma. They'd been in the same 2nd grade class at PS 118, best friends who shared lunch and secrets and the unfiltered joy of childhood. Maria remembered picking him up from school, watching him and Emma race to the playground, their laughter, identical music. She remembered Diego wrapping his arms around her as they watched their son play, whispering that they were the luckiest people alive. She remembered being wrong. The grief therapist had told her that eventually, the pain would transform into something bearable. That she'd learn to carry it instead of being crushed by it. What the therapist hadn't mentioned was that some days, Maria would see a little boy with curly hair like Miguel's and forget to breathe. That she'd hear a child's laughter and feel her arms ache with emptiness. That loving someone else's child would feel like both betrayal and benediction. But Emma, sweet, lonely, hurting Emma had crept into Maria's carefully guarded heart. It had started innocently enough. A scraped knee that needed bandaging, a nightmare that needed soothing when the night nanny didn't hear the crying. Maria knew she should maintain professional distance. She'd promised herself she wouldn't get attached. She'd failed spectacularly. 3 weeks ago, when Emma had slumped at the kitchen table, tears streaming down her face over her failed midterm exams, Maria's heart had made a decision her head couldn't override. I'm so stupid, Emma had sobbed. Everyone else understands, and I don't. Daddy's going to be so disappointed. He's always disappointed. Maria had knelt beside her, seeing not Emma but Miguel, remembering every homework session, every patient explanation, every moment of connection that had made parenting sacred. You're not stupid, Corazon. You're struggling. There's a difference. And, you know what helps when we struggle? Having someone who believes in us. Nobody believes in me, Emma had whispered. I do, Maria had said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. And I'm going to prove it to you. She'd started small. 10 minutes after dinner helping with math. 20 minutes before bed, reading together. Half an hour on weekends, turning history into stories and science into adventures. Maria used the same techniques she'd used with Miguel, making learning physical, emotional, connected to real life. She baked cookies to teach fractions, used Legos to demonstrate physics, turned vocabulary into treasure hunts through the mansion's library. But more than technique, Maria gave Emma something money couldn't buy: presence. She listened when Emma talked about feeling invisible in her own home. She held her when the little girl cried about missing a mother she never knew. She showed up, consistently and completely, in a way no one else had. The transformation had been remarkable. Emma's eyes had regained their light. Her shoulders had straightened. She'd started asking questions again, curiosity replacing resignation. Last week, she'd scored a 98 on her math quiz, a score she'd run to show Maria before anyone else, throwing her arms around Maria's waist and squealing with pride. Maria had held her tight, breathing in her strawberry shampoo, feeling Miguel's ghost smile with approval. This wasn't replacement. This was expansion. The heart, Maria was learning, had infinite capacity for love. Loving Emma didn't diminish her love for Miguel. It honored it. Still, she knew she was crossing lines. She was the help, the housekeeper. Not the parent, not the family, not permanent. Marcus Wellington barely looked at her, barely knew her name. She was furniture that occasionally moved. Getting attached to Emma was setting herself up for heartbreak. When the wealthy man eventually noticed his daughter again, Maria would become redundant.
Dismissed.
The thought of leaving Emma felt like losing Miguel all over again. As sunrise painted the kitchen gold, Maria heard small footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared in the doorway, hair sleep-mussed, clutching the stuffed elephant Maria had given her last week. "Buenos dias, mi pequeña maestra," Maria said, smiling. "Ready for a morning lesson?" Emma's face lit up. "Can we do the history project? The one about brave women who changed the world." "Of course. Go get your notebook. I'll make your favorite breakfast." As Emma scampered off, Maria felt the familiar tug of joy and sorrow. She was teaching Emma about brave women, but what about her own bravery? What did it look like to love without guarantee, to show up without promise of staying, to open her broken heart one more time? She didn't have answers. She only had today, this moment, this chance to matter in a little girl's life. For a woman who'd lost everything, it was simultaneously not enough and more than she'd ever hoped to find again. The morning unfolded in their comfortable rhythm. Breakfast, then settling at the dining room table with books and art supplies. Emma was researching Harriet Tubman, her small brow furrowed in concentration as she read. Maria, why did she keep going back? Once she was free, why didn't she just stay safe? Maria paused, considering. Because freedom means nothing if the people you love are still trapped. Because having more than others means you have a responsibility to share what you have. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is risk our safety for someone else's hope. Emma looked up, her eyes, so much like her mother's, Maria imagined, impossibly wise. Like how you help me even though you're sad sometimes. I see it, when you look at me for too long. Like you're seeing someone else. Maria's breath caught. She'd thought she'd been careful, that her grief was invisible beneath her professional mask. But children saw what adults missed. They read emotions in the spaces between words. I had a son, Maria heard herself say, the words escaping before she could stop them.
Miguel.
He was your age. He was your classmate, actually. Do you remember him? Emma's eyes widened. Miguel Rodriguez? With the Spider-Man backpack? We used to play pirates together. Then understanding dawned, and her face crumpled. The accident. I remember. Everyone was so sad. Miss Peterson cried during circle time. Yes, mi amor. Miguel and his father. They went to heaven together. Emma was silent for a long moment, processing. Then she slid off her chair and climbed into Maria's lap, wrapping her small arms around her neck. I'm sorry you lost your family, but I'm glad you're here with me. Is it okay if I pretend you're my mom? Just sometimes? Maria felt tears slip down her cheeks, tears she'd been holding back for months. She pulled Emma closer, letting herself feel all of it. The loss, the love, the impossible gift of second chances. It's more than okay, Pequena. It would be my honor. They sat like that, two people shaped by absence, finding wholeness in each other. Neither of them noticed Marcus Wellington standing in the doorway, his face transformed by revelation, his entire world shifting on its axis as he finally understood what he'd been too blind to see. Marcus canceled his morning meetings. For the first time in 7 years, he sent his assistant a message that would have been unthinkable before yesterday. Clear my schedule for the day. Family emergency. I'll check in tonight. The confused response came immediately. Marcus Wellington didn't do family emergencies. He did hostile takeovers and algorithm launches and keynote speeches. He didn't do spontaneous days off. But watching Maria and Emma together had cracked something open inside him, and Marcus couldn't unsee what he'd witnessed. His daughter was thriving under the care of a woman he'd relegated to invisibility. A woman who'd suffered losses he couldn't imagine, yet still showed up with wholeness and warmth. A woman who was doing the job he'd abdicated, not as an employee, but as a human being who saw his daughter's soul. Marcus spent the morning doing something he rarely allowed himself, remembering. He pulled out boxes from the top of his closet, containers he'd sealed 7 years ago and never reopened. Inside were remnants of his life with Sarah. Photos, love letters, the journal she'd kept during her pregnancy. He forced himself to look, to feel, to remember the man he'd been before fear calcified his heart. There was Sarah at their wedding, her eyes full of fearless love. Sarah at the beach, her hand on her swollen belly, laughing at something Marcus had said. Sarah in the hospital, pale but radiant, whispering, "Take care of our girl. Promise me you'll be brave enough to love her completely." He'd promised. Then he'd broken that promise every day for 7 years. Marcus found Sarah's journal and opened to the last entry, dated 3 days before Emma was born. "I'm terrified and elated in equal measure. What if something goes wrong? What if I'm not enough? But then I remember, love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up." Marcus overthinks everything, analyzes every angle, hedges every bet. But parenthood can't be hedged. "I hope if anything happens to me," he remembers that our daughter doesn't need a perfect father. She needs a present one. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah had known him, had seen his tendencies toward emotional self-protection. Even then, she'd tried to warn him, to guide him. He'd ignored her wisdom and proven her fears right. His phone buzzed incessantly. Ignored calls from his COO, urgent texts about a merger deal. Marcus silenced it all. For once, the most important thing in his world was actually in his world, just downstairs, and he was done missing it. Around noon, Marcus descended to the kitchen. Maria was preparing lunch, Emma coloring at the table. They both looked up in surprise. Marcus was never home during the day. "Emma," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Could we talk? Maybe take a walk?" Emma's eyes widened with apprehension. In her experience, her father wanting to talk meant disappointment or criticism. Maria caught her hand, squeezed gently. "It's okay, Pequeña. Go." They walked through the estate's gardens, Emma silent and wary, Marcus searching for words he'd never learned to say. Finally, he stopped by Sarah's favorite rose garden, maintained obsessively though Marcus never visited, and knelt so he was eye level with his daughter. "Emma, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. I've been absent. Worse than absent. I've been physically here but emotionally gone. I've let fear make me a coward, and you've paid the price." Emma stared, confused. Her father didn't apologize. He didn't admit weakness. He certainly didn't cry, but there were definitely tears in his eyes now. "I saw you yesterday," Marcus continued, "with Maria. I saw you laughing and learning and being yourself in a way I haven't seen since, in a way I've never seen. And I realized Maria's been giving you what I should have been providing all along, not just help with homework, but presence, attention, love." "Maria's nice to me," Emma whispered. "She makes me feel like I matter." The words were a knife to Marcus's heart. "You do matter, sweetheart. You're the most important person in my entire world. I just forgot how to show it. After your mom died, I was so scared of losing you too that I lost you anyway by never really being with you." Emma was quiet, processing. "Then, do you love me? More than anything. More than my company. More than money. More than my own life. I love you with everything I am, Emma. I just forgot that love is a verb. It requires action. Maria says love means showing up." Marcus laughed through his tears. "Maria is right. She's been showing up for you in ways I should have. And I want to do better. Starting now." Starting today. Will you give me a chance? Emma studied him with her mother's discerning eyes, weighing his sincerity. Finally, tentatively, she nodded. Can Maria still help me? She understands things. Absolutely. In fact, I was hoping we could all work together. If that's okay with you? The smile that broke across Emma's face was sunlight after endless winter. She threw herself into Marcus's arms, and he held her tight, breathing in her little girl's scent, feeling his heart remember how to be tender. That afternoon, Marcus joined the tutoring sessions. He watched Maria's teaching methods, her patience, her creativity, her ability to connect lessons to emotions and real life. He saw how she made Emma feel safe enough to make mistakes, how she celebrated effort over outcome, how she built confidence through genuine care. Marcus started asking questions, not about business, but about Maria. Where had she learned to teach like this? What was her background? The answers came slowly, Maria clearly uncomfortable with her employer's sudden attention. But gradually, the story emerged. Her degree in early childhood education, her dreams of becoming a teacher, her years as a classroom aide before Miguel was born, her plans to return to teaching that died with her family. Why didn't you go back? Marcus asked gently. After your loss? Maria's eyes filled with old pain. I couldn't be in a classroom full of children Miguel's age. Every face reminded me of what I'd lost. Cleaning houses felt safer, less personal, or so I thought. She glanced at Emma with tender exasperation. This one had other plans for my heart. Emma beamed, oblivious to the adult complexity of grief and healing. Maria's the best teacher ever, Daddy. Way better than those other people you hired. Marcus had to agree. Over the next 2 weeks, he cleared his afternoons to participate in Emma's learning. They turned science into kitchen experiments, history into field trips to museums, literature into family story time. Marcus discovered his daughter was brilliant, curious, funny. She'd always been these things, he'd just been too absent to notice. But more than Emma's academics, Marcus witnessed something profound, Maria's gentle facilitation of healing. She helped Emma understand her grief over never knowing her mother. She helped Marcus talk to his daughter about Sarah in ways that honored memory without drowning in sorrow. She taught them both that love doesn't end with death. It transforms, continuing in new relationships and unexpected grace. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus found Maria in the kitchen, preparing the next day's meals. Maria, can we talk? She looked up, guarded. Conversations with employers rarely went well for domestic workers. I want to thank you, Marcus said, for saving my daughter, for being what she needed when I was too broken to provide it. I just did what felt right, Mr. Wellington. Marcus. Please. And it was so much more than just. You gave her yourself, your time, your heart, your wisdom. You helped her heal while dealing with your own grief. That's not just anything. That's extraordinary. Maria's eyes filled. She reminds me of Miguel. Same age, same brightness. Helping her helps me remember that love doesn't die. It finds new forms. I think you're teaching me that too, Marcus admitted. I've spent 7 years thinking that staying emotionally distant would protect me from pain. You've shown me that withdrawal is its own kind of death. Emma needed you. I think I do too. Not as an employee, as a teacher, a friend, maybe more in time if you'd ever consider. He trailed off, suddenly aware of the enormity of what he was suggesting. Maria was staring at him, shock evident on her face. Mr. Wellington. Marcus. Marcus. I'm your housekeeper. There's a power differential, professional boundaries. I know. And I'm not asking you to blur those boundaries now. I'm just asking if you'd consider becoming Emma's official tutor. With appropriate compensation, benefits, a real contract. And if, over time as equals, we might explore what else could develop. No pressure. No expectations. Just possibility. Maria was quiet for a long moment. Then, can I think about it? Take all the time you need. That night, Marcus lay awake, his mind spinning with unfamiliar hope. He'd built an empire through calculated risks, but this was different. This was his heart, his daughter's heart, tangled with a woman who'd suffered more than he could fathom, yet still chose kindness. He'd spent 7 years trying to control outcomes, and here he was, surrendering to uncertainty. It felt terrifying. It felt right. It felt like the beginning of something that might, finally, feel like home. The next 3 weeks transformed the Wellington household in ways both subtle and seismic. Marcus found himself rushing home from work, a phrase his assistant had to verify she'd heard correctly, eager to participate in the evening tutoring sessions that had become the center of his day. Emma's upcoming final exams loomed, but for the first time, neither she nor Marcus felt anxiety about them. Maria had accepted Marcus's offer to become Emma's official tutor, though she'd been careful to maintain professional boundaries even as their dynamic shifted. She moved through the house with new confidence, no longer hiding in the shadows, but engaging as a valued member of the household. Marcus had given her full access to his home library, encouraged her to suggest field trips and educational experiences, and, most importantly, listened when she shared insights about Emma's learning style and emotional needs. Emma flourished under their combined attention. The withdrawn, struggling child who'd failed her midterms was unrecognizable. In her place was a vibrant 7-year-old who raced through the front door each afternoon, bursting with stories from school, eager to tackle homework with her 2 favorite people flanking her. Her teacher, Miss Patterson, had called Marcus personally to express amazement at the transformation. "Mr. Wellington, I've been teaching for 20 years, and I've rarely seen such a dramatic change in a student. Emma participates in class discussions now. She helps other students. She's confident, joyful, engaged. Whatever you're doing at home, it's working miracles." But Marcus knew it wasn't miracles, it was presence. It was Maria's patient teaching, his consistent showing up, and Emma's blossoming in the soil of genuine care. The 3 of them had developed rituals: breakfast together before school, afternoon sessions at the dining room table that mixed academics with laughter, evening walks through the garden where they processed the day and shared their highs and lows. Marcus found himself learning alongside his daughter. Maria had a gift for making complex concepts accessible, for connecting disparate ideas into coherent narratives. She taught history as interlocking stories of human courage and failure. She presented science as humanity's ongoing conversation with the mysteries of existence. She treated literature as windows into different souls, opportunities for empathy and understanding. More than academics, Maria taught them about resilience. She shared stories from her own life, growing up in Queens with immigrant parents, fighting for her education, losing everything and choosing to continue anyway. Her vulnerability gave Emma permission to express her own fears and sadness. It gave Marcus permission to grieve openly for Sarah, finally, after 7 years of emotional lockdown. One afternoon, as they studied the solar system, Emma asked, "Where do people go when they die? Are they out there somewhere?" She looked between Maria and Marcus, her eyes holding confusion and hope in equal measure. Maria glanced at Marcus, silently asking permission to address this. At his nod, she pulled Emma into her lap. "I don't know exactly where they go, Pequena, but I believe they live on in us. Your mama lives in your smile, in your kindness, in the way you see the world. Miguel lives in every child I help. Every moment, I choose love over fear. The people we love never really leave us." "Do you think they can see us?" Emma whispered. "I think they're proud of us," Marcus said, surprising himself. "I think your mom is so proud of how brave and smart and loving you are. And I think Miguel would be happy that his mama found another child to care for, because love doesn't divide, it multiplies." Emma nodded solemnly, seeming to accept this. Then, with the mercurial shift of childhood, she brightened. "So, they're probably proud about my test scores too, right? Since I've been working so hard." Marcus and Maria laughed, the heavy moment lifting. "Definitely," Maria agreed. "Now, let's make them even prouder by mastering these planetary orbits." As the weeks progressed, Marcus noticed Maria's grief softening at the edges. She smiled more readily, laughed without the shadow of guilt, allowed herself to be present in joy rather than constantly glancing back at loss. Emma's unconditional affection was healing her, and Marcus found himself marveling at the mystery of it. How giving love could restore it, how opening your broken heart could somehow make it whole. He was also increasingly aware of Maria as a woman, not just a teacher or friend. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the melody of her laugh, the fierce intelligence in her eyes when she debated historical interpretations or scientific theories, the grace of her hands as she demonstrated a concept or comforted Emma. Marcus felt himself falling, not the desperate, drowning feeling of his youth with Sarah, but something gentler, steadier, built on respect and shared purpose. But he held back. Maria had experienced enough upheaval, enough loss. She needed stability, not romantic pressure from her employer. So Marcus channeled his feelings into being the best co-parent and student he could be, trusting that if something was meant to develop, it would happen in its own time. The night before Emma's final exams, they had a celebratory dinner, Maria's idea. She'd cooked Emma's favorite meal, and they ate together in the dining room that had witnessed so much of their transformation. Emma was nervous but confident, the combination of emotions healthy and human. "I'm scared," she admitted, pushing her rice around her plate. "What if I forget everything? What if I fail again?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Marcus said immediately. "But Emma, you're not going to fail. You know this material. More importantly, you've learned how to learn. That's the real skill. And even if the test doesn't reflect everything you know," Maria added, "we're proud of you for the effort, the growth, the bravery you've shown. The grade is just a number. The person you've become, that's what matters." Emma nodded, visibly relaxing. Then she looked between them, her expression serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart," Marcus said. "Are we a family? Like, I know Maria's not technically my mom and you're not technically together, but it feels like we're a family. We eat together and learn together and take care of each other. That's what families do, right?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. He looked at Maria, seeing his own emotions reflected in her eyes, surprise, tenderness, careful hope. "Yes," Maria said softly. "I think we are a family. Maybe not the traditional kind, but family nonetheless. The best kind," Marcus added. "The kind we choose, built on love and respect and showing up for each other." Emma beamed.
Good.
"Because I love you both. And I want us to stay like this forever." Forever was a promise neither adult could make, but in that moment, it felt possible. After Emma went to bed, Marcus and Maria lingered at the table, the weight and wonder of her words hanging between them. "She's remarkable," Maria said. "So much stronger than she knows. Because of you. You've given her that strength. We've given it to her. Together." Marcus reached across the table, letting his hand rest near Maria's. Not touching but close. "I meant what I said weeks ago. About possibility. About exploring what might develop between us. I know it's complicated, and I won't pressure you. But Maria, you've become essential to me. To both of us. Not as an employee. As a partner. A friend. Someone I admire and respect and care for. Deeply." Maria looked at their almost touching hands, and Marcus saw her walls warring with her heart. Finally, she closed the small distance, her fingers intertwining with his. "I care for you too," she admitted. "And it terrifies me. I lost everything once. The idea of loving again, of risking that kind of pain." "I know. Believe me, I know. I've spent 7 years building walls to avoid exactly that. But Emma's taught me something crucial. Safety isn't the absence of risk. It's the presence of people who'll catch you if you fall. And if we try this and it doesn't work, Emma's already attached. I can't hurt her. Then we proceed carefully, honestly, with her well-being as our North Star. But, Maria, I think we owe it to ourselves to try. Life's already taken so much from both of us. Maybe it's time to take something back." Maria was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, the full, unguarded smile Marcus had learned to treasure. "Okay, we try."
Slowly. Carefully.
Together. They sat there, hands intertwined, two broken people who'd found unexpected wholeness in each other and in the little girl sleeping upstairs. Outside, Manhattan glittered with its usual indifference, millions of people living millions of separate lives. But inside the Wellington house, three souls had found each other across the wreckage of loss and built something precious, a family chosen, earned, and fought for. The next morning, Emma aced her finals. The day Emma received her final exam results, Marcus left work at noon, a departure that caused his executive team to wonder if their CEO had been replaced by an identical but emotionally available twin. He picked Emma up from school himself, something he hadn't done since her first day of kindergarten, and her face, when she saw him waiting by the entrance, was worth every meeting he'd canceled. "Daddy." She launched herself into his arms, her backpack flying, test papers clutched in her fist. "Look, look, look." Marcus set her down and took the papers with trembling hands. Mathematics, 96%. Science, 98%. English, 94%. History, 100%. Social studies, 97%. His daughter, who'd failed every subject just 2 months ago, had scored in the top percentile of her class. But more than the numbers, Marcus saw the comments from her teachers. Emma has shown remarkable growth and confidence. A joy to have in class. Her enthusiasm for learning is contagious. "Emma, this is incredible. I'm so proud of you." "Maria said you'd be proud even if the numbers were different, but I'm glad they're good numbers because I really did work hard." She bounced on her toes. "Can we go tell her? Please? She's going to be so happy." They drove home together, Emma chattering about her day, and Marcus realized this was what he'd been missing, the small, ordinary moments that constituted a life. Not board meetings or merger deals, but his daughter's excitement about the class hamster, her opinion on which lunch trade was most fair, her theory about why the sky changed colors. Maria was waiting in the kitchen, attempting to hide her nervousness behind meal prep. The moment Emma burst through the door, shouting about her scores, Maria's face transformed. She dropped the knife she'd been using, swept Emma into her arms, and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying simultaneously. "I knew it. I knew you could do it, mi pequeña brillante." "We did it," Emma corrected. "You taught me how to understand things. Daddy helped me believe I could. We're a team." Marcus felt his heart crack open wider. He'd spent his entire adult life building an empire alone, priding himself on self-sufficiency. Watching his daughter understand the power of interdependence, of accepting help and sharing success, it was a lesson he was still learning. That evening, they celebrated with Emma's favorite dinner and a cake Maria had secretly prepared. As Emma blew out 7 candles, for her 7 years, she explained, she made a wish with her eyes squeezed tight. When Marcus asked what she'd wished for, she shook her head. "Can't tell, or it won't come true. But it's about us staying together forever." After Emma finally fell asleep, exhausted from excitement, Marcus found Maria on the back terrace. The spring air was soft, carrying the scent of Sarah's roses, and for the first time in years, Marcus could think of his late wife without drowning in grief. She felt present but peaceful, blessing rather than haunting. "Thank you," he said, joining Maria at the railing. "For Emma."
For me.
"For showing us that healing is possible." "I should be thanking you. When I took this job, I was just looking for a way to survive. I never expected to find a reason to live again." Marcus turned to face her fully. "Maria, I need to tell you something. I've spent the last month trying to take things slow, to be respectful of boundaries. But watching Emma tonight, seeing how happy she is, how much she loves you, how much I love you, I can't keep pretending this is just about convenience or Emma's education." Maria's breath caught. "Marcus, let me finish. Please." He took her hands. "I know this is complicated. I know there are a dozen reasons why this might not work. But I also know that you've taught me the most important lesson of my life, that love requires courage. The courage to be vulnerable, to risk pain, to show up even when it's terrifying. I want to show up for you. Not as your employer, but as someone who sees you, values you, loves you. If you'll have me. Maria's eyes glistened with tears. I'm scared. I'm scared of losing again, of Emma getting hurt, of disappointing you. I'm scared my grief will always be a shadow between us. I'm scared I'm not enough. You're more than enough. You're everything. And yes, we're both carrying loss. But maybe that's exactly why we work. We understand that love doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means honoring it while building something new. Miguel was my whole world, Maria whispered. And Diego. Losing them nearly destroyed me. I know. Sarah was mine. Emma's birth and death simultaneously. For 7 years, I thought the answer was to never love that fully again. You've shown me I was wrong. The answer is to love even more fully because they taught us how. Maria looked out at the garden, at the life Marcus had built but never inhabited. Then she looked back at him, and in her eyes, Marcus saw the moment she chose bravery over fear. Okay, she said.
Yes.
I want this. I want us. Marcus pulled her close, and they stood there under the stars, two people remade by loss and healed by a little girl's need for love. When they finally kissed, it was gentle and certain, a promise and a beginning. Over the next months, they navigated their new reality carefully. Marcus formally hired Maria as Emma's private tutor and educational consultant, with a salary that reflected her worth and professional respect. They dated, actual dates where Marcus planned surprises, and they talked about everything except Emma, learning each other as individuals, not just co-parents. They told Emma gradually, giving her time to adjust to the idea that her two favorite people were becoming something more. Her response was characteristic. Took you long enough. I've been trying to get you two together forever. Apparently, 7-year-olds were more perceptive than adults gave them credit for. Marcus's family and friends were initially shocked, then cautiously supportive. His mother worried about the optics, his colleagues questioned the wisdom of dating the help, but Marcus shut down every concern with firm grace. Maria is the woman who saved my daughter and taught me how to be human again. Anyone who can't respect that isn't welcome in our lives. Maria's family, her parents who'd emigrated from Mexico, her siblings who'd worried about her grief, embraced Marcus and Emma with characteristic warmth. At Sunday dinners in Queens, Marcus learned to eat authentic tamales and participate in spirited Spanish conversations, with Emma translating, experiencing a family dynamic he'd never known in his own sterile upbringing. They blended their worlds slowly, introducing Emma to Maria's extended family, teaching Marcus to cook traditional dishes, sharing holidays between the Hamptons estate and the Queen's apartment where Maria had grown up. Emma thrived with the expansion of love and culture, becoming bilingual, learning about her mother's Anglo heritage and her chosen family's Mexican traditions. But it wasn't perfect. Maria struggled with moments of grief, days when Miguel's ghost was overwhelming. Marcus had to learn that supporting her didn't mean fixing her pain. It meant sitting with her in it. Emma occasionally felt jealous of having to share Maria's attention with Marcus, requiring careful navigation and reassurance that love multiplies rather than divides. One evening, nearly 6 months after Emma's triumphant finals, they sat together in the library, the room that had witnessed Emma's transformation from struggling student to confident learner. Emma was reading independently, Marcus working on his laptop, Maria grading the assessments she'd created for her expanding tutoring practice. It was ordinary and extraordinary, this quiet domesticity. I want to ask you both something, Marcus said, closing his laptop. Emma and Maria looked up. Emma, how would you feel about Maria moving in with us? Officially. As my partner. Your, well, whatever you want to call her. Emma squealed and launched herself at Maria.
Yes.
Yes. Can we make your room pretty? Can you teach me more Spanish? Can we? Breathe, pequeña. Maria laughed, but her eyes were on Marcus, questioning. I want to build a life with you, Marcus said. Both of you. I know it's fast by some standards, but we've lived more in these past months than I did in 7 years. I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want you going home to an empty apartment. I want you here, with us, making this house a home. What about your business associates? Your social circle? They already whisper about the billionaire dating his housekeeper. Let them whisper. I spent too much of my life caring about optics and reputation. Now I care about this. He gestured to their tableau. About being present for the people I love. Anyone who can't accept that can find the door. Maria looked at Emma, at Marcus, at the life they'd built from brokenness. She thought of Diego and Miguel, of the promises she'd made at their graves to honor their memory by living fully. This messy, unconventional, beautiful family was living fully. Yes, she said. I'd love to move in. I'd love to build this life with you both. Emma hooped, already making plans for room decoration and family game nights. Marcus crossed the room, pulled Maria into his arms, and whispered against her hair. Thank you.
For taking a chance on us.
For teaching me that second chances are possible. Third chances, Maria corrected softly, thinking of Miguel, of Diego, of the life she'd lost and the one she'd found. And they're only possible because we're brave enough to risk our hearts again. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Marcus stood in the doorway of her room, watching her peaceful face in the moonlight. Sarah's photo sat on the nightstand, not hidden, but honored. Maria appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. She'd be proud of you, Maria said. Of the father you've become. I couldn't have done it without you. We did it together. That's what family means. And standing there, two people who'd known profound loss and chosen profound love, Marcus finally understood what Sarah had tried to tell him 7 years ago, that showing up was everything, that love required presence, that the heart's capacity was infinite if you were brave enough to keep it open. Emma stirred in her sleep, smiled at some private dream, and whispered, Love you, Mom. Neither Marcus nor Maria knew which mother she meant, Sarah, Maria, or the amalgam of both who lived in her heart. It didn't matter. Love wasn't ownership or replacement. It was addition, expansion, the miraculous multiplication of the heart. They had lost. They had grieved. They had found each other in the wreckage and built something new. Not perfect, but real. Not painless, but worth it. That was the truest definition of family. People who showed up over and over, choosing each other through difficulty and doubt. People who understood that love was a verb, an action, a daily decision to be present. Marcus closed Emma's door softly and led Maria to their own room, a future unfolding, scary and certain, broken and whole, infinitely possible because they'd chosen to risk their hearts one more time. 1 year later, the Wellington estate had transformed from a showpiece into a home. Children's artwork covered the previously pristine walls. Maria's book collection shared shelves with Marcus's business biographies. The kitchen, once used only for catered events, now bore the happy chaos of regular family cooking. The garden bloomed with vegetables Emma and Maria had planted together, a project that had turned into a lesson about patience, nurturing, and watching things grow. Emma had just completed 3rd grade, straight A's, a development so expected now that it no longer shocked, though they celebrated anyway. More importantly, she'd been nominated by her classmates for a leadership award, recognition of how she helped struggling students with the same patience Maria had shown her. The cycle of love and learning was perpetuating itself, rippling outward in ways they'd never anticipated. But today was special for reasons beyond academics. Marcus had closed his laptop 3 days ago and hadn't opened it since, a vacation from work that his executive team had learned to respect after he'd proven that focused presence created better leadership than constant availability. They were spending the week at a beach house in Montauk, just the 3 of them, building sandcastles and collecting shells and being together without agenda. Emma was down by the water, fearless in a way she'd never been before, secure enough in herself to take risks. Maria and Marcus watched from the porch, their hands intertwined, comfortable in the silence that no longer needed filling. I've been thinking about something, Marcus said. About making this official. All of it. Maria turned to him, eyebrow raised. Define official. I want to marry you. I want to adopt Emma as our daughter. Legally recognize what's already true in our hearts. I want to create a family that's not just chosen but documented, protected, permanent. Maria's breath caught. They talked about marriage in abstract terms, but Marcus had never proposed directly. Marcus, you know I love you. You know I love Emma more than I can express. But marriage, it's such a statement. Are you sure you're ready for the world's judgment about how quickly this happened, about the optics of the billionaire marrying his former housekeeper? I've never been more sure of anything. And as for the world's judgment, Marcus shrugged. Let them judge. They don't live our life. They don't know what we've survived to get here. They don't understand that sometimes the fastest route is also the truest one. What about Emma? We should ask her first. Make sure she's comfortable with the changes. Already did. I asked her last week if she'd be okay with me proposing to you, with making you officially her parent. You know what she said? What? She said, Daddy, Maria's already my mom. You're just making the paperwork match reality. About time. Marcus laughed, shaking his head. That kid. Too smart for her own good. Maria felt tears threatening. I can't replace Sarah. I don't want Emma to forget her birth mother. You're not replacing anyone. You're expanding our capacity for love. Sarah will always be Emma's mother, her biological mother, the woman who gave her life. But you're her mother too, the woman who taught her to live. People can have more than one mother. Hearts are big enough. My family will want a huge celebration. Yours will want. I don't even know what the Wellington family does for weddings. Then we'll compromise. 2 ceremonies, one for your family's traditions, one for mine. Or we'll create entirely new traditions that blend everything we are. Maria, I don't care about the logistics. I care about standing up in front of everyone who matters and claiming you as my partner, my love, my choice for the rest of my life. Maria looked out at Emma, who was now building an elaborate sandcastle, her small face serious, with concentration. She thought about Miguel, about the life she'd lost, about the guilt she'd carried for finding happiness again. But mostly, she thought about what Diego would say if he could see her now.
He'd say yes.
He'd say life is short and precious and love is the only thing that matters. He'd say Miguel would want his mama to be happy, to build a new family that honored their memory by living fully. He'd say take the chance, take the joy, take the man and the little girl who need you as much as you need them. Okay, Maria whispered.
Yes. I'll marry you.
I'll adopt Emma. I'll build this life with you officially and permanently and without reservation. Marcus pulled her close, and they held each other as the ocean roared its approval, as Emma played in the sand, as their future unfurled before them like the endless horizon. They told Emma that evening over dinner. Lobster rolls and corn on the cob, all of them sandy and sun-tired and happy. Her reaction was pure Emma, practical excitement with just a touch of sass. Finally, can I be the flower girl at the wedding? Can I wear a fancy dress? Can Maria's last name be Wellington too, so we all match? Can we get a dog? I feel like families with this much love should definitely have a dog. They laughed, negotiated the dog question, maybe, after the wedding, if Emma proved she could handle the responsibility, and spent the evening planning their blended future. Emma insisted on being part of every decision. The wedding would reflect all of them, not just the adults. Later, when Emma was asleep, Marcus and Maria walked the beach under stars that seemed impossibly bright. They talked about their wedding, about Emma's adoption, about the foundation Marcus wanted to create in Sarah's name to help single parents access quality education. They talked about Maria's dream of opening a learning center for kids who struggled academically, a place that emphasized emotional connection alongside intellectual development. We could combine our dreams, Marcus suggested. The Sarah Wellington Foundation could fund your learning center. Make it accessible to families who couldn't otherwise afford specialized education. Maria stopped walking. You do that? Create something so substantial based on my dream? It's our dream now. And Sarah would love it, using her memory to help children thrive. Plus, it's a smart business decision. You've proven that connection-based education works. We could revolutionize how we approach learning. They stood at the water's edge, waves lapping at their feet, and Maria felt the full weight of what they'd built. From employer and employee to partners in love, life, and vision. From broken people to healers creating systems to prevent others' brokenness. Miguel would love this too, she said softly. He always wanted to help other kids. Make them feel included. We could dedicate part of the center to his memory. The Miguel Rodriguez Wing. Where kids learn that love doesn't end, it transforms. Maria kissed him then, salt and sand and promise, two people who'd survived impossible loss and found improbable joy. They'd come so far from that dining room where Marcus first saw Maria teaching Emma, where he'd had his world-shifting revelation. That moment had cracked him open, and everything that followed was the messy, miraculous work of letting light into those cracks. The wedding took place 6 months later, a blend of elegance and warmth that reflected their journey. They married twice, once in a small ceremony at City Hall with just Emma and their immediate families, and again in a larger celebration that combined Maria's Mexican Catholic traditions with Marcus's more secular Protestant background. Emma stole the show in both, her speech about her 2 moms and 1 dad, leaving not a dry eye in the house. "My first mom gave me life," Emma had said, wise beyond her 8 years. "My second mom taught me how to live it. My dad learned to be brave enough to love us both." That's what family means, people who keep choosing each other even when it's hard. Maria's adoption of Emma was finalized the same week, a legal recognition of what they'd all known for 2 years. She was Emma's mother in every way that mattered. Emma had asked to change her name officially, Emma Sarah Wellington Rodriguez, honoring both her birth mother and her chosen one. The Learning Center opened a year after the wedding, a beautiful facility in Queens that served 200 children in its first year. They called it The Bridge, a place that connected struggling students to their potential, families to resources, grief to healing. Maria served as executive director, finally fulfilling her dream of teaching while Marcus provided business oversight and funding. Emma was their first student ambassador, sharing her story of transformation to give other kids hope. On the 5-year anniversary of that first tutoring session, the day Maria had comforted Emma over her failed midterm exams, they gathered as a family in the library where so much of their healing had occurred. Emma was now 12, confident and compassionate, already mentoring younger children at the Bridge. She'd inherited Sarah's eyes, Maria's kindness, and Marcus's strategic mind, a perfect blend of all her parents. "Remember when I was 7 and couldn't understand fractions?" Emma asked, grinning. "And Maria used cookies to teach me?" "I remember thinking we'd never get through long division," Maria laughed. "You were so convinced you were hopeless at math." "I remember being terrified," Marcus admitted. "Terrified I'd lost you before I ever really had you. Terrified I'd fail as a father the way I'd been failing. Watching Maria teach you that day, it changed everything." "It changed all of us," Maria said. She looked around the library, at the photos that now covered the walls, Emma's academic achievements, family vacations, the Bridge's opening day, Miguel's photo next to Sarah's, both remembered and honored. "We were all broken in different ways. We healed each other." Emma stood, solemn in a way she rarely was anymore. "I want to say something. I know this is cheesy, but I'm 12, so I'm allowed to be cheesy." She waited for their laughter to subside. "Thank you. Thank you, Maria, for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you, Dad, for learning to be present. Thank you both for showing me that family isn't just biology, it's choice and commitment and showing up even when it's hard." She pulled them both into a hug, and they held each other. This family built from wreckage, this proof that love was the greatest teacher of all. Later that night, Marcus stood in the garden, in the rose bushes that bloomed in Sarah's memory. Maria found him there, slipped her hand into his. "Thinking about her?" she asked. "Thanking her. For Emma. For the wisdom she left in her journal about being present. For somehow leading me to you." "I think about Miguel and Diego every day," Maria confessed. "But the pain's different now. It's not the sharp, drowning thing. It's tender, bittersweet. I can remember them with joy instead of just sorrow. That's because we created space for both. We didn't try to replace what we lost. We honored it by building something new alongside it. They stood in comfortable silence, two people who'd learned that healing wasn't linear, that grief and joy could coexist, that love was brave enough to try again even after devastating loss. Emma appeared in the garden doorway, backlit and beautiful. Are you guys having a moment? Because I made brownies and they're getting cold, and family brownie time is a sacred tradition we made up 5 minutes ago. Marcus and Maria laughed, linking hands as they walked toward their daughter, their brilliant, brave, beloved daughter who'd been the catalyst for their healing. Inside, the house glowed warm, full of life and laughter and the messy beauty of people who'd chosen each other across every obstacle. This was the gift Marcus had received from that day 5 years ago when he'd finally opened his eyes and seen Maria teaching Emma. The understanding that presence was everything, that showing up transformed lives, that love required the daily courage to risk your heart. He'd been a billionaire who had everything and felt empty. Now, he was a man who had what mattered: connection, purpose, family built on foundation of mutual healing and respect. He'd learned that wealth meant nothing without people to share it with, that success without love was just accumulation, that the most important work he'd ever do wasn't in boardrooms, but in this home, with these two people who'd remade him from the inside out. They ate brownies in the kitchen, Emma telling stories about her day, Maria adding commentary, Marcus soaking in the ordinary magic of family dinner. This was what Sarah had wanted for him. This was what Maria and Emma had given him. This was what he'd spend the rest of his life protecting, nurturing, and celebrating. As they cleaned up together, Emma washing, Maria drying, Marcus putting away, he caught Maria's eye and mouthed, "I love you." She smiled, that full, unguarded smile he'd learned to treasure, and mouthed back, "I know." Outside, the Manhattan night sparkled with its usual indifference. But inside the Wellington home, 3 hearts beat in synchrony, 3 souls intertwined by choice and courage, 3 lives proving that the greatest wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in presence, in showing up, in loving fully despite every reason to be afraid. Emma had asked 5 years ago if they were a family. The answer then had been tentative, hopeful. The answer now was absolute. They were family, chosen, earned, fought for, and infinitely precious. They were proof that second chances were real, that love multiplied rather than divided, that broken hearts could heal if they were brave enough to stay open. They were the family that formed when a billionaire finally learned to see, when a grieving mother chose to love again, when a little girl taught the adults in her life that connection was the greatest teacher of all. They were home,